For nearly 4 decades, the 1986 Miami shootout has been reduced to a single explanation: a 9mm bullet failed. That narrative is repeated in gun forums, documentaries, and even professional discussions. A round struck one of the suspects early in the firefight. It did not immediately incapacitate him. The engagement continued. Agents were killed. The conclusion seems simple: the ammunition failed. But that explanation is incomplete. The round performed within the limits it was designed for. It penetrated, it disrupted tissue, it caused damage. What it did not do was account for a suspect willing and able to continue fighting despite catastrophic injury. The deeper issue was not ballistic malfunction, it was institutional assumption. On April 11, 1986, 8 FBI agents attempted to stop 2 violent bank robbery suspects in Miami, Florida. Within minutes, the encounter escalated into one of the most studied law enforcement gunfights in American history. The Bureau did not lack courage that morning. It lacked alignment between doctrine and reality. The bullet did not fail first, the model did. And once that model collapsed, everything built on it collapsed with it. By the mid-1980s, the FBI believed it had modernized its field operations. Agents were trained in surveillance, vehicle tracking, coordinated arrest procedures, and sidearm proficiency. The Bureau had transitioned many agents to semi-automatic pistols, primarily 9mm Smith & Wesson models, replacing older revolvers in numerous divisions. The prevailing operational philosophy emphasized controlled arrests. Surveillance teams would identify suspects, coordinate positioning, and execute a vehicle containment stop designed to overwhelm and compel surrender. Historically, that approach worked. Most suspects fled or complied when boxed in by federal vehicles and armed agents. Long guns were available but not universally deployed in rolling surveillance operations. The expectation was not a sustained firefight. It was rapid dominance through positioning and presence. Qualification standards reflected typical engagement distances. Handgun training prioritized accuracy and controlled fire under moderate stress. Rifle caliber threats from mobile suspects were not the baseline planning assumption for domestic bank robbery investigations. In short, the Bureau prepared for criminals seeking escape. The 2 suspects in Miami were different. They had demonstrated increasing willingness to engage in violence during prior robberies. They were physically capable, heavily armed, and not inclined toward surrender. Yet on the morning of April 11, agents approached the vehicle stop using a structure built on prior probability, not on worst-case resistance. The doctrine was not reckless. It was outdated for the adversary they were about to confront. The surveillance team identified the suspect's vehicle and began mobile tracking through suburban Miami streets. Multiple unmarked Bureau cars participated. Communication occurred between vehicles, but there was no single, centrally declared moment of coordinated assault. As traffic patterns shifted, agents made the decision to execute a rolling vehicle containment. The intent was to box in the suspect's car using forward and rear positioning, forcing it to stop and preventing escape. What followed was not a clean containment. Vehicles closed distance unevenly. One Bureau car collided with the suspect's vehicle, pushing it off the roadway into a residential area. Another Bureau vehicle was forced into an awkward angle after impact. Spacing deteriorated rapidly. Instead of a controlled, staggered takedown with clear lines of fire and cover, the battlefield compressed into a chaotic cluster of vehicles at close range. Distance, which might have favored agents with coordinated fire, disappeared. Agents exited vehicles at different moments. Some were partially shielded by engine blocks. Others were exposed between doors and wheel wells. No synchronized command to initiate fire existed. The arrest structure dissolved into individual reactions. The suspects, armed with a Ruger Mini 14 rifle and additional handguns, exited with immediate offensive intent. In seconds, what was designed as a containment became a close-range rifle engagement. The FBI had expected compliance under pressure. Instead, they encountered resistance under fire, and the space they had created to control the stop had collapsed into a compressed, lethal geometry that favored neither side, but exposed structural weaknesses immediately. The collision was not part of a synchronized assault plan. It was the byproduct of converging vehicles closing too quickly under pressure. When the suspect's car was forced off the road, Bureau vehicles came to rest at irregular angles, some partially blocking others. There was no centralized verbal countdown, no unified signal to dismount. Agents exited based on proximity and perception of threat, rather than coordinated timing. Within seconds, gunfire began. Some agents were still orienting themselves when the first rifle rounds were fired. Others had not yet achieved stable cover. The battlefield was no longer structured by design. It was shaped by physics and momentum. Several agents found themselves outside their vehicles without full protection from engine blocks. Others were separated from teammates by disabled cars and shattered glass. Communication, which had functioned during surveillance, now fragmented under the volume and immediacy of fire. The system had relied on positional dominance. Instead, it produced positional vulnerability. This was not hesitation, it was structural disorganization. Multiple capable agents were now operating as individuals in overlapping lines of fire, facing a suspect willing to press forward rather than retreat. The arrest attempt had transformed into a decentralized fight for survival. The Ruger Mini 14 rifle carried by one of the suspects fundamentally altered the engagement. Chambered in .223 Remington, the rifle fired a high-velocity projectile capable of penetrating vehicle panels, windshields, and intermediate barriers more effectively than standard handgun rounds of the era. Most agents were armed with 9mm pistols. Some still carried .38 special revolvers. A 12-gauge shotgun was present, but not immediately accessible in the opening seconds. Handgun ammunition in 1986 was designed around expansion and moderate penetration, based largely on earlier ballistic thinking that emphasized energy transfer over consistent depth through intermediate barriers. Vehicle glass changes bullet trajectory, steel absorbs velocity, angle matters, distance matters. The suspect's rifle did not rely on close proximity. It could disrupt cover and extend threat range beyond what most handgun qualification drills simulated. This was not a question of bravery. It was a question of ballistic reality. The Bureau's operational assumptions were built around suspects attempting escape with handguns. Instead, agents faced sustained rifle fire from adversaries willing to remain in the fight even after taking significant injury. The physics favored the rifle. The doctrine had not fully accounted for that possibility. Early in the engagement, an agent fired a 9mm round that struck one of the suspects in the upper torso. The bullet penetrated an arm before entering the chest. It stopped short of the heart by a matter of inches. The suspect remained mobile and continued fighting. This moment became the central explanation for the entire firefight. The narrative hardened quickly. The 9mm lacked stopping power, but the bullet functioned within its expected performance envelope. At the time, there was no standardized federal requirement mandating 12 to 18 inches of consistent penetration in ballistic gelatin after passing through intermediate barriers. There was no comprehensive FBI-controlled wound ballistics workshop yet defining optimal penetration depth. The Bureau's understanding of terminal performance was influenced by earlier theories emphasizing expansion and rapid energy deposit. Deep penetration through bone, muscle, and oblique angles was not universally prioritized in design standards. The suspect did not fall because immediate incapacitation is not guaranteed by caliber alone. Human physiology under extreme stress is complex. Determined adversaries can continue purposeful action even after receiving fatal wounds. The round did not malfunction. It did not defy physics. It exposed a calibration error in ballistic expectation. When the suspect remained active, the model that assumed rapid incapacitation through center mass hits revealed its limits. That single wound forced a reassessment not only of ammunition design, but of the broader assumptions governing federal handgun doctrine. The bullet became the symbol. The underlying issue was the standard behind it. Despite sustaining injuries, both suspects continued to maneuver and fire. Several agents were also wounded in the opening minutes, but remained engaged. The scene did not settle into a controlled perimeter. It remained fluid, fragmented, and lethal. Communications suffered under the pace of events. Agents operated with limited real-time coordination, relying on individual sightlines and instinct rather than structured command direction. The absence of immediate rifle parity compounded the imbalance. Handgun reload cycles, injury management, and vehicle repositioning all consumed seconds that mattered. The engagement lasted only minutes in absolute time, but under sustained rifle fire, with multiple casualties and no immediate dominance advantage, those minutes expanded psychologically and tactically. The firefight did not continue because agents lacked skill. It continued because the initial structure failed to deliver rapid control. Once the engagement shifted from arrest to rifle confrontation, the Bureau was operating outside the threat profile it had optimized for. An adaptation in real time is slower than preparation done in advance. When the gunfire ended, the Bureau faced more than casualty reports. 2 agents were dead, 5 were wounded. The suspects were neutralized, but the tactical outcome was not the only issue under review. The Bureau initiated a formal internal evaluation that extended beyond individual decision-making. The focus shifted quickly toward structural assessment. How had a planned arrest evolved into a prolonged rifle engagement? Why had center mass handgun hits failed to immediately incapacitate? Why had agents entered a compressed engagement zone without rifle superiority? This was not a public relations exercise, it was an institutional audit. In 1987, the FBI convened the Wound Ballistics Workshop, bringing together trauma surgeons, ballistics experts, pathologists, and firearms specialists. The goal was not to defend previous ammunition choices. It was to establish measurable standards rooted in medical science rather than assumption. The conclusions were significant. Immediate incapacitation could not be reliably predicted by caliber alone. Bullet performance had to be evaluated based on consistent penetration depth through realistic barriers. The human body presented unpredictable angles, bone structures, and intermediate obstacles. A round that failed to reach vital structures after passing through an arm, glass, or clothing could not guarantee rapid threat stoppage. The workshop recommended a penetration standard of 12 to 18 inches in calibrated ballistic gelatin. That benchmark became foundational. The issue was no longer stopping power in abstract terms. It became quantifiable penetration performance under controlled testing conditions. The Miami firefight did not merely prompt debate, it produced a measurable technical standard. The adoption of new penetration standards forced the Bureau to reevaluate its service ammunition and sidearm selection. The 9mm loads commonly issued at the time did not consistently meet the new depth criteria under all testing conditions. In response, the FBI adopted the 10mm auto cartridge in the late 1980s. The round offered greater velocity and penetration potential, aligning more closely with the workshop's recommendations. However, recoil management and firearm size presented challenges for widespread agent deployment. This led to a practical compromise. The .40 Smith & Wesson cartridge emerged as a shortened derivative of the 10mm, designed to fit into 9mm size frames while maintaining penetration standards defined by the FBI's testing protocol. The cartridge spread rapidly across American law enforcement agencies in the 1990s. The Miami incident also accelerated structured ballistic testing protocols nationwide. Manufacturers now had to design ammunition to meet FBI gelatin standards, including barrier blind testing through glass and steel. Ammunition marketing shifted from energy claims to documented penetration depth and expansion consistency. The change was not cosmetic, it reshaped handgun ammunition development for decades. For the first time, federal ballistic expectations were grounded in reproducible laboratory testing rather than anecdotal field outcomes. The round that failed in public narrative became the catalyst for the most influential ammunition reform in modern American law enforcement history. The reforms did not stop at ammunition. The Bureau expanded long gun availability in field operations. Greater emphasis was placed on rifle deployment during high-risk stops. Vehicle stop tactics were re-evaluated with stronger focus on coordinated positioning and clear assault initiation signals. Qualification training evolved to reflect more realistic engagement scenarios, including barrier penetration awareness and stress shooting under compressed distance conditions. Other agencies followed. State and local departments adopted the FBI's penetration benchmarks. Caliber transitions across American policing throughout the 1990s were influenced directly or indirectly by the Miami findings. Firearms instructors began teaching threat physiology with greater nuance, emphasizing that incapacitation is not instantaneous nor guaranteed by caliber selection alone. The incident also shifted mindset. The assumption that criminals would disengage once confronted by overwhelming authority weakened. Training began to incorporate the possibility of suspects continuing to fight despite severe injury. The Miami firefight did not militarize American policing. It recalibrated it. It forced agencies to acknowledge that preparedness must account for adversaries who do not follow expected patterns. And that recalibration spread nationally. For decades, the 1986 Miami firefight has been blamed on a single 9mm round, but the bullet did what it was designed to do. The real failure was the FBI's threat model. The Bureau was structured for suspects who fled, not adversaries willing to absorb injury and continue fighting. Its arrest doctrine, ballistic standards, and positioning assumptions were built on probability, not worst-case resistance. When that round failed to immediately incapacitate, It exposed outdated expectations about handgun performance and rapid compliance. The result was not just a deadly gunfight, but an institutional reckoning that reshaped federal ballistics testing, penetration standards, caliber selection, and rifle deployment nationwide. The lesson wasn't about stopping power, it was about calibration. Institutions don't fail because individuals lack courage. They fail when preparation lags behind evolving threat behavior. If you value analysis of the decisions that forced real policy change, subscribe to Pressure and Policy, where we examine how doctrine breaks and how it gets rebuilt.